friends. Louise saw greatness everywhere. Everything was just wonderful, whether she was working on a project or producing a recital. Everyone she connected with received her full support. She celebrated their potential, and she loved them with all her heart. She didn't feel the need to go to church, and I can see now why. She was trying to live by the teachings of Christ. She wasn't perfect, but she was honorable. She wasn't always respectful either, but usually in her disrespect, she was fighting for a higher purpose. If she saw you as a barrier to the greater good, then the greater good was going to get her support. And she managed to do all of this without any stress illnesses. No ulcers, no migraines, nothing. And she only started to get high blood pressure when she entered Parliament. And I'm not looking at anyone in particular or calling any names. Our mother knew this island perhaps more intimately than any of us realized, which is why she could speak so truthfully and with such great clarity about the social conditions of Bermuda. Because she knew the children. She went into the homes through Tupperware parties. She associated with administrators and civil servants. She socialized with the governors, and she played in the sandbox with the politicians. And for good measure, she dined more than once with the Queen of England. So really, she interacted with the whole spectrum of this community. She knew this island. Her community service extended, as we've heard and read, and many of you have sat on boards and committees with her. Her service extended to the Bermuda Hospitals Board, the Bermuda Health Council, the Seniors Advisory Board, the Bermuda Housing Trust, the Broadcast Commission, the Bermuda High School for Girls Board of Trustees, the Bermuda and Professional Women's Association, the International Women's Federation, and the Hamilton Rotary Club. In the realm of the arts, Louise served as chairman of the National Gallery, chairman of the Library Committee, and deputy chairman of the Bermuda Arts Council. Additionally, she was active in the Bermuda Ballet Association, the Bermuda Festival Committee, and the Center for the Performing Arts. She was also a founder of the National Dance Theater. As you can imagine, and some of you have even commented in your condolence calls, a child of Louise had to share her with so many others and so many causes. Of course, we would wonder from time to time where her priorities fell. Recently, we found one of Mummy's old passports, and keeping in mind all that we know of her many accomplishments and affiliations and qualifications, she had listed her occupation as housewife. And so today we say farewell and thank you to Bermuda's most well-known housewife, our beloved mother, Louise Ann Carpenter Jackson, my hero. She's an amazing woman and her spirit lives on. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
A reading from the book of Proverbs, chapter 31. A wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with her hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand, she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed, and she is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of a household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring praise at the city gate. This is the word of the Lord.
Lord, may the words of my mouth and the thoughts and meditations of all our hearts be now and always acceptable in your sight. The Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. Well, who would have thought it a week or so ago that we would be here this morning to come together, to remember, and to give thanks to God for the life of Louise Jackson. We know, as we've heard, and we know there's much to be thankful for, and as a country we are much indebted to her as we were to her late husband for these years of service. There has been so much written in the press, and of course each of us in this church this morning will know and have our own stories to tell, and I hope that you will continue to tell your stories. Grateful, hugely grateful to those who've been able to share from their heart today. Thank you, Deborah, so much for your remembrances. It's not really my role per se to expand upon these public things, although of course they are all part of her legacy that we will need to continue to fulfill, if you like. But really my job is to bring a voice of comfort into the lives of those who will miss her the most. That hole, that vacuum that has been left behind. Those who will have to deal with all the different emotions that her death will bring. I'm speaking of course to her family. To Deborah, Susan, Samantha, Scott, Natasha, to Carol and her family. But there is, as we've been hearing, more than just the immediate family. There are all those people for whom Louise was like a mother. It's extraordinary the way that she was able to treat each person as an individual that she met, whether it was a senior living in poverty in some hole in the wall, or whether it was the Queen of England, as the most important person. To invest her concern in them and able somehow to give extraordinary words of encouragement appropriate for each person, whether it be for a new bishop, as she did for me on numerous occasions, whether it be the man or woman on the street. Many people felt that she was on their side, as if she was some kind of loco parentis for them. I did ask her daughters when we met to give her one word that described her character. We've heard it already, but I'll revert to it again, and that word was fierce. But not in an antagonistic way, but in a passionate way. Fierce devotion to others, fierce love, fierce defense of the vulnerable. And I asked, where did it come from? Well, in many ways, the testimony is that it came from her parents, who in a very real way had to be fierce advocates for their daughter. Because you may not think of her in these terms, but when she came into the world, she was very vulnerable, very weak, with rickets, a black, poor family, living at the time of the Depression. But her parents fought for her. They insisted that she get the best schooling, that she had the best opportunities. She learned from them how to fight with that fierceness for the vulnerable. But I love what Deborah had to say about her life and her self-perception, because we know all about her public side, but her own self-identity was that in the bosom of her family as that extraordinary housewife. Her love for her husband and their shared life together, their travels together, these are the stuff of legends. So it's wonderful how fitting it is that her granddaughter should choose that amazing reading that we had from the book of Proverbs, that idealized woman who comes from the end of that book, a woman of wisdom. And goodness me, if you women are there reading that, you might think to yourself, who could possibly attain to that there? But somehow, there are many of Louise's characteristics that resonated very there. It begins with a noble wife. Who can find? Well, Albert Jackson found her a couple of days after she arrived at the age of 21 at her brother's house. That's where he found her, and that's where they got it together. As it were. Well. Language is a complicated thing. But what we do know is that he trusted her, she trusted him, and they were together. And it was, she was many of those things that that passage speaks of. Hardworking, trustworthy, fruitful, creative, a woman of learning, a woman of business, busy in providing for those around her. Now, I don't suspect that Louise handled much flax in her time. Of course, I'm not talking about flack. She handled flack pretty well. She gave a lot of flack. But she was certainly hardworking. To be sure, there's no bread of idleness in her household. The passage speaks of the ability of her husband to be out of the gates. Now, I don't know if you know much about the gates, but the gates were where politics and business were transacted. And due to her support, Albert was able to be actively involved in such things. But it wasn't just him, as we know. She, too, was able to open her mouth with wisdom. The teaching of kindness was on her tongue most of the time. Her husband praised her. Her children praised her. She too entered into the activity by the gates. And we as a community, we praised her. Her queen praised her. But as we praise her, we also need to say goodbye. And that, of course, is hard. I know that she wasn't overly religious or a churchgoer, but she was confirmed in this cathedral church many years ago. And whilst she may have had some struggles with the church of her day, and good reason for, yet she sought, as we've heard, to live in a Christ-like way, that way of love. And now today we are leaving her in the hands of a God who is in his nature and essence love, who has received her into his care with love, mercy, and justice. But this same God who is love has words to say to us who are left behind. Words of presence, of hope, of peace. We sang a few minutes ago those very familiar words from the 23rd Psalm, and it speaks to us of the Lord. There are two words translated in our Old Testament as Lord. One of them, and it's this one, is the I am God, Yahweh, the God who always is. The God who makes a promise and a covenant with his people never to leave them or forsake them. The psalmist says, that Lord is my shepherd. Shepherd who knows, leads, and guides his sheep In those days you will know that a shepherd had that combination of toughness and tenderness. And they lived with their sheep 24/7. They didn't clock off at the end of the day. Their lights were on all night. And so it is that Jesus came and lives with us, entered our world with all its mess and its sadness and its confusion and pain. Sheep then and people now are often prone to wander, given to anxiety and distress, but the shepherd would hunt for them, he would rescue them, he would restore them, just as Jesus still does, for those of us who are wayward, lost, and confused. He knew the shepherd would know his sheep by name. They'd recognize his voice. He'd watch out for them, staff at the ready to protect, to prod, to poke, to push in the right direction. He'd walk before them through dangerous and dark places to a new pasture. And God is still all those things. We need only to call out to him, to listen for his voice and follow where he leads. He invites each one of us to come to him, heavy laden, weary, sad, confused, unsure of what the future is going to bring, angry, hurt, lonely, guilty, afraid, grieving. Come to him. He'll give you rest, forgiveness, peace. He is still a presence through the storms of life. He is still a guide in times of trouble. The psalm begins, the Lord is my shepherd. It's Jesus. He is all of those things. We just need to lead, and he'll come.